On April 28, 1972, my friend Virgil Hicks, his German Shepherd True, and I hit the road on a 7-week road trip around the United States. We were 18 years old, just a year out of high school, during which I had always had a job working at service stations, and we were looking to see the USA in our 1960 Ford Falcon Ranchero, to which we had added a home-built camper shell. We took a southern route to Florida, where we stayed with family friends catching our catfish dinner every day for over a week. From there up the East Coast to my sister's place in Massachusetts, homeward bound through Jeffersonville, Indiana, where Virgil and I parted ways, spending my last few days at Lake Tahoe sleeping on the beach. I will do my best here to describe a few of our adventures along the way. I did this mostly for my kids and grandkids, but it is my hope that others will find it having been worth a little of their time. Excerpts from the travel log I kept. Can't believe I did that back then, but I am sure glad I did, as my memory of that trip surely would have mostly faded away by now. I had graduated high school the year before, and I had convinced my dad that this was the right way to spend the $2,000 in college money my grandfather had left me before he passed a few years earlier. For some reason I no longer remember, we spent our first night camping in the parking lot of the Mustang Ranch, just a few miles down Highway 80 from Sparks, Nevada. This place was a famous bordello at the time with a fascinating history. On day 2 we camped in the ghost town of Troy, Nevada, in an old salt mine building where we heard trains blowing their whistles all through the night. The next day, trekking through the desert, we got the ranchero stuck in the mud. Our friend Rick Bland had ridden up to meet us there on his Yamaha RD350. Quite the ride on such a small motorcycle, and I am still friends with Rick today. I have never been able to find this place on a map, so I assume its name was not actually Troy. Arriving in Las Vegas the next day, we were hoping to meet girls. But when you're driving a funky old ranchero with a homemade camper, well, good luck, guys. From my notes throughout the trip, we were both pretty obsessed with girls and drinking beer, most of which I will skip. We had spent the night outside Las Vegas at Sherry's Ranch, which stunk, but before leaving Las Vegas we treated ourselves to a fantastic 49-cent breakfast that included 2 eggs, ham and coffee. Across the Hoover Dam, a swim in Lake Mead on the way to a non-campsite campsite at the Grand Canyon, where we slept on the camper roof. We hiked around, got lots of pictures, and we met some really far-out people. From there we organized and cleaned the car and headed to Flagstaff, Arizona, where we stayed 20 miles outside of town on the side of the road. Driving to Wichita Falls, we found we were just 3 miles from Shepherd Air Force Base, so we went in to see a kid I grew up with, Greg Thomas, who we finally found at 7 p.m., and we proceeded to celebrate by going down to the Airmen's Club, where we listened to a live band and had a few beers, after which we bought a case which we took into Greg's barracks, where we spent the night. The next morning we went cruising in Greg's Javelin in attempt to pick up chicks. No luck, but we came close. We ended up staying on the base for a week, taking side trips, playing pool, bowling, cruising, and going to a few movies, and of course drinking lots of beer. We left for Denton, Texas, where we spent the night at a roadside motel. From there we drove to Alexandria, Louisiana, enjoying the beautiful country and clean air. We stopped along the way and bought sandwiches, which we ate by a stream. We also rented a boat and did a little swimming, but not much, as there were alligators. The drinking age here is 18. Our next stop was New Orleans, getting in around 4 p.m. We stopped to have a beer down on Bourbon Street, where we did a little bar hopping. But when we came back to the car, we freaked as the tape deck and our 2 shotguns were missing. Luckily, a lady in the area was able to tell us that the police had done it. There was nothing we could do, so we drove out of town to an old railroad yard and went to bed. The next morning we found the New Orleans police station and verified that they had taken all of our stuff and the dog. We had to get an affidavit in order for Virgil to get his gun back. In all the running around the city, I got pulled over again for no reason. But we finally got all our stuff and the dog back, who had gotten shots that were not needed. We never did get an explanation for what they had done, but I have always assumed it was because our car had California plates. We drove from New Orleans to Mississippi, where we almost stayed in Gulfport, Alabama for the night, but kept on moving. We ended up spending the night outside Mobile, Alabama, hitting the road early the next day, and had been driving all day when the battery started to die, and we ended up leaving the car at a Gulf station in Denelon, Florida, where we got a room at the motel next door. The lady at the motel was really nice and let us stay there for $5. We also had a radiator hose blowout and a leaking transmission, but we were able to get all back in working order. Our next stop was Hernando, Florida, where Virgil had family friends. These folks made us feel right at home. We went fishing with Ron in one of the pits where I caught 10 catfish, took them home, and got them cleaned for a great dinner. It was simply wonderful. We slept on the porch, and the next morning had the best breakfast I have had in years. After breakfast, we pretty much fished the rest of the day, but I only caught 1 catfish, but we ended up with enough for dinner, which Ron cooked once again in a delicious butter and flour sauce and served them with mashed potatoes. We went out with Ron's wife Brenda after dinner, and I called my girlfriend Carol back home. In total, we spent 9 days with Ron and Brenda lazing around, eating like kings, fishing, swimming, hunting, and of course drinking lots of beer, and in all my notes not once did I write down their last name. Who knows if they are still around, but if they were I sure would like to thank them again for the hospitality, which was the highlight of our trip. On our way to my sister's place in Amherst, Massachusetts, we spent our nights sleeping on the side of the road, at highway rest stops, and in one case behind a church. When we got to Washington, D.C., we got a tour of the White House, the House and Senate. I even saw Tip O'Neill before he became the Speaker of the House. From there we drove to New York City, where we had enjoyed a little wine with dinner. I called home and then went on to find a place to sleep, ending up somewhere outside the city. On the last leg of that part of the trip, the car would not start in the morning for about an hour. We finally did get it running, but barely fast enough to get on the freeway, where we ended up paying $6.80 in tolls driving through Delaware, Connecticut, and into Massachusetts before finally getting to Marilee's place in Amherst. The house was pretty small, so we ended up sleeping on the kitchen floor. The bad news was the Ranchero was now completely dead, and we were not at all sure we would be able to get it running by the time we needed to leave. We worked around Herb and Marilee Place cutting up trees, tearing down fences, installing a window in the tool shed, and cleaning up the goat house where we slept for the rest of our visit. I remember we went to see the movie The Last Picture Show, which I really enjoyed, and I called home to Carol and Dad. Back to the car not starting, a new carburetor did not do the trick. I finally figured out that it needed a new timing chain and a plug wire. That done, it was now running perfectly. We did more work on the tool shed and called it a day. After we got the doors put up on the shed, we hit the road for New York City at about 5 a.m. in Marilee's Chevy wagon. We rode the subways, saw what we could of the city, and went to see the movie Midnight Sun, but getting back to Marilee's in New York's traffic took us 4 hours, and when we got there, True was missing. We of course found him, and this pretty much concluded our visit with Marilee and Herb. As we hit the road for home, we had one more major stop to make along the way. Virgil wanted to see an old family friend in Jeffersonville, Indiana, a Miss Sacrin who lived in a 10-foot by 20-foot ground floor apartment, not much bigger than a closet. Her only income was a minimal Social Security stipend, and she survived in part by harvesting weeds in her neighborhood. She was a very proud and religious woman who believed that California would soon disappear into the Pacific Ocean following a catastrophic earthquake. That was enough to convince Virgil to stay here. What a freak. Will he really do it? Yes, he got a job at Grant's and a hotel room at the Riverside. Miss Sacrin cooked us lunch and dinner, and I spent the night in Virgil's hotel room. The next morning I took Virgil to work, picked up a tire and a jack for the Ranchero for $7, and bought a few quarts of transmission fluid. That night we stayed outside and talked to all sorts of people, and we found someone to take Virgil's German Shepherd True. The morning I said goodbye to Virgil, shown in this photo at that moment, and Miss Sacrin and hit the road for home. Had a blowout just outside Indianapolis, but that spare tire got me back on the road again. Drove all day and got stuck on a dirt road, but was lucky enough to have a guy in a pickup tow me out. Spent the night at a trailer camp for $2. Drove through Iowa, Nebraska, and Wyoming, where I showered and took off for Reno, adding 2 quarts of transmission fluid along the way and used lots of gas. Called home and spent the night right inside the Wyoming border. The next morning I hit the road at 6 a.m. and drove from Wyoming through Utah and into Nevada using another 2 quarts of transmission fluid, but had no other mishaps. I called my brother Jay, hoping he would bring my '68 Bronco up to my friend Bob Van Gelder's place in Homewood at Lake Tahoe, and I spent that night on a dirt road in Elko, Nevada. Finally making it to Tahoe the next day, my brother Jay came through by driving my Bronco up to my friend's place at Homewood, where we swapped vehicles, him driving the Ranchero back home, where it died once again, never running again as long as I owned it. The photo here shows the forlorn Ranchero back home sometime later after I had sold the Bronco and used that money to buy that red 1965 Corvette at the Fairfield Chevrolet dealer for $1,750 out the door. That's my dog Willie jumping out of the Corvette. Postscript. My friend Virgil never did come back to California, and he passed some time ago. Rest in peace, Virgil. I went back to work at the Chevron station in Orinda until I got a job at the cable TV company in Moraga at the age of 19, a career I stuck with for 36 years. Thank you, Grandpop, for the funding to do this trip. I know you intended this money to be used for higher education, and in the end I think that goal was accomplished, albeit without the use of books or classrooms. Written and produced by Mark Harrigan. Thank you for watching.